standing in the decorated gymnasium of Lincoln High School, surrounded by classmates I hadn't seen in 20 years. I wondered why I'd bothered coming to the reunion at all. The same cliques had reformed as if no time had passed. The popular kids clustered around the makeshift bar, the athletes comparing stories about their glory days, and the academic overachievers discussing their corporate careers with practiced modesty. And then there was me standing alone by the memorial table, wearing a simple black dress that cost more than most people's monthly salary but looked like something from a department store clearance rack. Exactly how I'd planned it. Morgan Sullivan, is that really you? I turned to find Brittany Michaels approaching, her perfectly styled blonde hair and designer outfit screaming expensive maintenance. She'd been head cheerleader, prom queen, and everything I'd never been in high school. Hi, Brittany. I managed to smile. You look great. Thanks. I just got back from a spa weekend in Napa. You know how it is. She looked me up and down with barely concealed pity. So, what have you been up to? I heard you moved back to town a few years ago. I did. I run a small business here now. Oh, that's nice. Local businesses are so important. What kind of shop do you have? Before I could answer, a booming voice interrupted us. Well. If it isn't little Morgan Sullivan. My stomach dropped. Jason Crawford stood behind me, flanked by two of his old football buddies, wearing the same smirk that had terrorized me through 4 years of high school. At 48 he'd gained weight and lost hair, but his eyes still held that cruel gleam I remembered too well. Jason, I said quietly. I heard you were back in town. Living in that little apartment above the bakery, right? Some things never change. He laughed and his friends joined in. Remember in senior year when I said you'd never amount to anything? Looks like I was right. A small crowd was gathering now, drawn by Jason's loud voice and the promise of drama. I recognized faces from my graduating class. Some sympathetic, others merely curious, a few clearly enjoying the show. Leave her alone, Jason, said a voice from the crowd. David Chin, who'd been in my chemistry class, stepped forward. We're not in high school anymore. Oh, I'm not being mean, Jason replied with false innocence. I'm just catching up with an old friend. Morgan here was always the smart one, right? Straight A's, academic scholarships going to change the world. And look how that worked out. My face burned with humiliation, but I kept my expression neutral. I'd learned long ago not to give bullies the satisfaction of seeing they'd hurt me. So what happened, Morgan? Jason continued, warming to his audience. Too much pressure at that fancy college? Couldn't handle the real world? It's okay, not everyone's cut out for success. Actually, I said softly, college went fine. I graduated summa cum laude from Stanford with a degree in computer science. Jason waved dismissively. Sure, but that was 20 years ago. What have you done since? Because from what I hear, you're living like you did in high school, alone, broke, and going nowhere. The crowd was growing larger now, and I could see phones being pulled out to record what was clearly becoming this reunion's main entertainment. Some faces showed embarrassment at Jason's behavior, but no one else stepped forward to intervene. 20 years later and still a failure, Jason announced to the crowd, his voice carrying across the gymnasium. Some people never change. The words hit exactly as he'd intended them to. The same words he'd whispered to me on graduation day, promising that real life would prove he'd been right about me all along. For a moment I was 18 again, standing in this same gymnasium trying not to cry as he and his friends laughed at my dreams. But I wasn't 18 anymore. Before I could respond, the sound of feedback from the PA system cut through the noise. Everyone turned toward the small stage that had been set up at one end of the gym, where a microphone stand had been placed next to a table displaying old yearbooks and class photos. Good evening, everyone. Mayor Patricia Williams stepped up to the microphone, her voice echoing through the gymnasium. I hope you're all enjoying reconnecting with old friends and classmates. A polite round of applause rippled through the crowd. Mayor Williams had graduated 5 years ahead of us and had returned to Lincoln after a successful career in city planning. She was well liked and respected, known for her efforts to revitalize our small town's economy. Now, I know this isn't part of the official reunion program, she continued, but I couldn't let this evening pass without making a special announcement. As many of you know, our town has been working hard to attract new businesses and investment. We've been particularly focused on bringing technology companies to Lincoln, knowing that our future depends on innovation and economic diversification. I felt a familiar flutter of anxiety. I'd been working closely with the mayor's office for months on various initiatives, always careful to keep my involvement quiet and behind the scenes. Tonight, I want to publicly thank someone who has been instrumental in our town's economic transformation. Someone who has not only brought jobs and investment to Lincoln but has done so with a level of generosity and community spirit that exemplifies the best of our hometown values. Jason was still standing near me, but his attention had shifted to the mayor along with everyone else's. The gymnasium had grown quiet except for the mayor's voice and the occasional whisper. This person has chosen to work quietly without fanfare or recognition, but their impact on our community has been extraordinary. In the past 3 years alone, they've been responsible for bringing over 200 new jobs to Lincoln, investing millions of dollars in local infrastructure, and supporting dozens of small businesses through grants and partnerships. My heart was pounding. This wasn't supposed to happen. I'd specifically asked Mayor Williams to keep my involvement confidential. We're honoring our town's most successful entrepreneur, she continued, someone who left Lincoln 20 years ago with big dreams and has returned to make those dreams a reality for our entire community. The crowd was murmuring now, everyone looking around to see who the mayor might be talking about. I could hear people speculating about which of our classmates had achieved such success. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to join me in recognizing Morgan Sullivan, founder and CEO of Sullivan Technologies, whose company has generated over $3 billion in revenue and whose personal commitment to Lincoln has made her our town's greatest success story. The silence that followed was deafening. Every head in the gymnasium turned toward me. Phones that had been recording Jason's taunts were now focused on capturing my reaction. The crowd that had gathered to watch my humiliation was now staring in shock. Jason's mouth was hanging open. Brittany looked like she'd been slapped. David Chin was grinning broadly, but most faces showed the same expression of disbelief. Morgan, Mayor Williams called out, would you please join me up here? I felt like my legs might give out, but I forced myself to walk toward the stage. The crowd parted as I moved through them, whispers following in my wake. Many of you remember Morgan as a brilliant student who left Lincoln with a full scholarship to Stanford. The mayor continued as I climbed the steps to the stage. What you might not know is that she founded Sullivan Technologies in her dorm room and built it into one of the most successful software companies in the world. I stood next to Mayor Williams, looking out at my former classmates' stunned faces. Jason was still exactly where I'd left him, but his expression had changed from smug satisfaction to something closer to panic. Sullivan Technologies, the mayor went on, has developed the operating systems used by over 60% of the world's smartphones. Their cloud computing platform serves major corporations on every continent. But more importantly for us, Morgan has chosen to relocate her company's research and development division to Lincoln, bringing high-paying tech jobs to our community. The murmurs in the crowd were getting louder. I could see people frantically Googling on their phones, probably trying to verify what they were hearing. Morgan has also personally funded the renovation of our library, the new computer lab at the high school, and the small business incubator program that has helped launch 15 new companies in the past 2 years alone. Mayor Williams turned to me. Morgan, would you like to say a few words? I stepped up to the microphone, my mind racing. I'd spent 3 years carefully maintaining my anonymity, living quietly in my small apartment, driving my unremarkable car, shopping at the same local stores I'd frequented as a teenager. Now, in a matter of minutes, that carefully constructed cover was completely blown. Thank you, Mayor Williams, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I have to admit, this wasn't how I planned to spend my reunion evening. A few nervous chuckles came from the crowd. When I left Lincoln 20 years ago, I was angry. Angry at people who told me I'd never succeed, angry at a town that felt too small for my dreams, angry at myself for caring so much about what others thought. I looked directly at Jason. I spent a lot of years trying to prove people wrong. Jason had gone pale. Several of his friends had quietly moved away from him. But somewhere along the way I realized that success isn't about proving anyone wrong. It's about building something meaningful and sharing it with others. When I decided to move my company's operations here, it wasn't about showing off or getting revenge. It was about coming home. I paused, scanning the faces in the crowd. Some showed genuine curiosity now, others embarrassment at their earlier assumptions. Lincoln shaped me in ways I didn't understand until I'd been gone for years. The values I learned here, Hard work, integrity, community, those became the foundation of everything I built. This town made me who I am, and I wanted to give something back. Morgan, someone called out from the crowd. It was Sarah Martinez, who'd been in my advanced placement classes. Is it true that Sullivan Technologies is worth $3 billion? I nodded. The company's last valuation was actually closer to $4 billion. But the number isn't what matters. What matters is the work we do and the people whose lives we can impact. But you live above the bakery, Brittany said, her voice confused. You drive an old Honda. You shop at the grocery store like everyone else. Because that's what I choose to do, I replied. Money doesn't have to change how you live. It just gives you more options for how you help others live. Another voice from the crowd. How many people do you employ? Globally, about 8,000. Here in Lincoln, we're up to 250, with plans to expand to 500 over the next 2 years. The questions kept coming. How had I built the company? Why had I kept it secret? What were my plans for the future? I answered each one as honestly as I could, watching as my former classmates processed this new reality. Finally, Mayor Williams stepped back to the microphone. I know this is a lot to take in, but I hope you'll all join me in thanking Morgan for her incredible contributions to our community. And now, please enjoy the rest of your reunion. As the crowd began to disperse, some people approached to congratulate me or ask more questions. Others, clearly uncomfortable with having their assumptions so dramatically overturned, drifted away to other parts of the gymnasium. Jason was not among those who left. He stood frozen in the same spot where he'd been standing when he called me a failure, his face a mixture of humiliation and disbelief. His friends had long since abandoned him, leaving him alone in his expensive suit that suddenly looked shabby compared to what he now knew was in my bank account. I walked over to him, curious to see if he'd say anything. Morgan, He started, then stopped, apparently unable to find words. You what, Jason? I had no idea. I mean, if I had known. You would have what? Been nicer to me? Only bullied people you thought were beneath you. I shook my head. That's not how kindness works. I thought. He was floundering, the confident bully completely gone. In high school you were so quiet, so easy to pick on? He flinched. I was a kid. I didn't know better. You're 48 years old, Jason. What's your excuse for tonight? He had no answer for that. David Chin appeared at my elbow. Morgan, I just wanted to say congratulations. And thank you for what you've done for the town. My cousin got one of the jobs at your company. It's changed his whole life. I'm glad to hear that, I said, grateful for the interruption. Also, David continued with a grin, I have to ask, was it satisfying? Watching Jason's face when the mayor made her announcement. I considered the question seriously. You know what? It really wasn't. I thought it would be, but mostly I just felt sad. Sad that someone could carry that much bitterness for 20 years. Jason was still standing there, clearly listening to every word. People change, David. Or at least they can choose to. I hope Jason makes that choice. I turned to leave, but Jason's voice stopped me. Morgan, wait. I looked back at him. I owe you an apology. Not just for tonight, but for high school. For all of it. You didn't deserve the way I treated you then, and you certainly didn't deserve what I said tonight. No, I didn't. He winced at my bluntness. Is there anything I can do to make up for it? I studied his face, looking for signs of genuine remorse versus damage control. Actually, yes. There is something you can do. Anything. Stop bullying people. Tonight proved you haven't outgrown it. Figure out why you feel the need to tear others down and fix it. Because if you don't, you're going to spend the rest of your life wondering what you might have accomplished if you'd spent half as much energy building yourself up as you did tearing others down. He nodded slowly. You're right. I'll work on that. I hope you do. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations with classmates who were suddenly very interested in reconnecting with me. Some were genuine, others were transparently opportunistic, but most fell somewhere in between. People who were honestly shocked by the revelation and trying to reconcile the quiet girl they remembered with the successful CEO standing before them. Sarah Martinez approached me near the end of the evening. Morgan, I have to ask, did you plan this? The timing, the mayor's announcement. I shook my head. Actually, no. I specifically asked Mayor Williams to keep my involvement quiet. I think she decided tonight was the right time to go public. Because of what Jason was doing? Probably. She's known me since I was a kid and she's always been protective of people who can't defend themselves. But you could defend yourself, Sarah pointed out. You're probably one of the most powerful people in the state. Power and the ability to defend yourself aren't the same thing, I replied. I could have stopped Jason by revealing who I was, but that would have been using my success as a weapon. I prefer to use it as a tool. As the reunion wound down, I found myself standing in the parking lot, looking back at the gymnasium where so much of my story had begun. The same building where I'd felt so small and powerless now felt different, not because the building had changed but because I had. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant. Saw the news coverage online. Your identity is officially out. How do you want to handle the media requests? News coverage. I'd forgotten that people record everything now. By tomorrow, the story of the reunion revelation would probably be all over social media and local news. I typed back, let's set up a proper press conference for Monday. Time to tell the whole story on our terms. As I drove home through the quiet streets of Lincoln, past the businesses I'd helped fund and the buildings I'd helped renovate, I reflected on the evening's events. For 20 years, I'd carried the memory of Jason's cruelty and the fear that maybe he'd been right about me. Tonight that fear had finally died. But more importantly, I'd learned something about the nature of success that no business school could have taught me. Real success isn't about proving people wrong or getting revenge on those who doubted you. It's about building something meaningful and using your achievements to lift others up. Jason Crawford had spent 20 years of his life believing he'd been right about me. Tonight he'd learned he was wrong. But the real lesson wasn't about my success. It was about the cost of his bitterness. While I'd been building a company and changing the world, he'd been stuck in the same mindset that had made him cruel to a quiet girl in high school. The next morning brought exactly what I'd expected: phone calls from reporters, interview requests from business publications, and social media messages from classmates who wanted to reconnect. But it also brought something I hadn't expected. A handwritten note slipped under my apartment door. Morgan, it read, I meant what I said last night about changing. I've already signed up for anger management counseling. I know it's not enough, but it's a start. Thank you for giving me the chance to apologize. I smiled, folding the note carefully. Maybe people really could change after all. The press conference on Monday was well attended. I talked about Sullivan Technologies' plans for expansion in Lincoln, the importance of bringing tech jobs to small towns, and my vision for the company's future. But the question that stayed with me came from a young reporter who couldn't have been more than 25. Miss Sullivan, what would you say to people who feel like failures, who think they'll never amount to anything? I thought about that quiet, hurt 18-year-old girl who'd walked across the graduation stage 20 years ago, carrying Jason's cruel words like a weight in her chest. I'd tell them that other people's opinions of your potential are not facts, I said. They're just opinions, often based on limited information and personal biases. The only person who gets to decide what you're capable of is you. And success isn't about proving anyone wrong. It's about proving yourself right. 5 years later, Sullivan Technologies employs over 800 people in Lincoln and has become one of the largest employers in the region. The company has launched a scholarship program for students interested in technology careers, and we've opened a coding boot camp that's already graduated 300 local residents into high-paying tech jobs. Jason Crawford now works as a counselor for at-risk youth, helping teenagers who are struggling with bullying and self-esteem issues. He's become one of our scholarship program's most effective advocates, speaking at schools about the importance of kindness and the dangers of letting bitterness control your life. And sometimes, late at night when I'm working in my home office overlooking the town I once couldn't wait to leave, I think about that reunion evening and the power of unexpected moments to change everything. Not because of what they reveal about our success, but because of what they teach us about who we choose to be when that success is tested. The quiet girl from Lincoln High School finally found her voice. It just took 48 years and $4 billion for everyone else to hear it.